So, chapter 3 is improving relationships. So the book talks about parental betrayal can be so extreme that trusting other humans is not an option. If this chapter feels too much, it's okay to skip it. You don't need to implement everything. Relational healing does come from non-humans too. Pets are great, mammals particularly, and it's also possible to come back to this stage in later stages of recovery. So then moves on to saying CPTSD as an attachment disorder. Emotional neglect is going to create attachment issues. There's no one to model relational skills necessary for intimacy. When healthy relating with a caretaker is unmet, survivors struggle to maintain supportive relationships in their adult lives. A child growing up without support naturally stops asking for help and is forced to be self-sufficient. Needing things from others is dangerous. Experiencing comfort and support becomes, I can't read my handwriting there, limited and non-existent. High-functioning survivors cope well with socially structured situations where expectations are clear and common goals are the focus. Unstructured situations such as parties, hanging out, can be more triggering. Spontaneous self-expression can feel like a disaster. Social anxiety can turn into phobia, especially with long flashbacks. Then it goes into relational healing. The author describes a tragedy with his pet, which allowed him to access a deeper surrendering to tears after a lot of not sleeping. And after the tears subsided, he knew he would be okay. So then he discovered that he couldn't access these tears all of the time. And that's what led him to seeking help in various therapies and healers. Real intimacy correlated with the amount that vulnerabilities are shared. Practicing emotional authenticity was, his experience was that melted loneliness. Group work can be more powerful in healing shame than individual work. It's like there's more mutual vulnerability, and feeling compassion for another who has suffered similarly to us sometimes naturally expands into feeling the same for ourselves. Our ability to metabolize painful emotional states is enhanced by communicating with a safe enough other. So then he talks about good enough relational help and points towards chapter 13 to find a good enough therapist. It's possible to also obtain relational healing from a partner or friend if they have had good enough parents or a lot of recovery. So you can develop an earned secure attachment, which means you're sufficiently healed from PTSD, which is evidenced by the survivor forming at least one supportive and reliable enough relationship. Once a partner or best friend develops outside of therapy, he reports, where the person can be truly themselves, this is often where his clients cease to have therapy with him. He talks about online recovery groups and forums can be helpful for those who find it difficult to be vulnerable in person. It can decrease the fear of self-disclosure, enhancing relating. Creating separation from parents, living without their controlness allows space from flashbacks. So when a parent is toxic, a few words from them can send a survivor into a flashback. So yeah, just not spending time with them is really supportive. Learning to handle conflict in a relationship It's unfair to expect anyone to accept you if you're being abusively angry or contemptuous. And this leads into the outer critic, which is covered more in chapter 10. Intimacy does not mean unconditional love. Disagreement, disaffection, and disappointment is normal. Success is an ability to handle these feelings of anger and hurt constructively when they show up. Reparenting. Love and protection. So self-mothering is about self-compassion. Self-fathering is about self-protection. When self-compassion has a firm enough base, self-protection arises naturally from within. So the book goes into self-mothering, which describes a deep sense that we are loved and deserve to be loved. We are lovable and deserve to be loved. And it talks about acceptance in all phases of our inner child messiness. Recovering from a lack of unconditional love. This is most developmentally needed in the first 2 years of life. So it's entirely acceptable if it can't be completely healed. When we reach toddlerhood, the love still needs to be copious, but the child needs to be shown that hitting, biting, breaking things are not acceptable. So this is the point where conditional love comes with healthy limits and rules. And learning that other people have rights and needs. Problems occur when there's no limit placed on entitlement. No limits for too long can create adult narcissism. Too many limits too soon, adult trauma. The absence of love or the sudden loss is very painful. Desperately wanting the unconditional love, but we can't, as adults, expect others to supply our unmet early needs. Therapy can help. With the right therapist, it can be enough to coax unconditional love into yourself. I made a note about myself that I struggle with consistency. And so for me personally, I seem to work better with workshops and retreats where I sort of tap into these as and when I'm ready for it. Romantic love can be a significant source of therapeutic, unconditional-like love, especially when it survives disappointment. There's a book called A Couple's Journey that the book mentions. It describes how to reap intimacy out of normal relationship disappointments. So then we have inner child work. Self-mothering, a refusal to indulge in self-hatred and self-abandonment. Self-mothering can be enhanced by thought-correcting both the inner and outer critics' negative messages with healing words that were likely never heard from our parents. Useful messages for nurturing growth of self-compassion and self-esteem. These are recommended to... handwriting fail again. No. Recommend speaking to the inner child. So these are some of the affirmations that are suggested. I'm so glad you were born. You're a good person. I love who you are, and I'm doing my best to always be on your side. You can come to me when you're feeling hurt or bad. You don't have to be perfect to get my love and protection. All of your feelings are okay with me. I am always glad to see you. It's okay for you to be angry, and I won't let you hurt yourself or others when you are. You can make mistakes. They are your teachers. You can know what you need and ask for help. You can have your own preferences and tastes. You are a delight to my eyes. You can choose your own values. You can pick your own friends, and you don't have to like everyone. You can sometimes feel confused and ambivalent and not know all the answers. I am very proud of you. Then the book goes into self-fathering. So where self-mothering was taking care of the wounds of neglect, self-fathering is looking at the wounds of being helpless to protect yourself. It aims at building assertiveness and self-protection and includes learning to effectively control external and internal abuse, as well as stand up for the inner child's rights. Many survivors benefit greatly from assertiveness training. So he talks about time machine rescue operation, reliving the past and playing out a different scenario, making the inner child feel safe and alive, like bringing in extra support. Then the book goes into reparenting by committee. Sometimes there's a need to be motivated, initiated by someone else. Hang on. Oh, sorry. Sometimes reparenting needs to be initiated by someone else, such as a therapist, sponsor, friend, or support group. It's also possible to reparent from books. Once enough help has been found in self-help books, it becomes possible to believe there might be a person out there who can support. And scanning over therapy discussions, I've personally found one-to-one therapy to be challenging, and I prefer coaching and somatic work. Sorry, my phone alarm going off. Then we go into self-relating and relating to others. Recovering is enhanced by human help. Survivors with harsh backgrounds may need a lot of work on other levels before they're ready for relational help. And this probably explains part of my challenges with one-to-one therapy, maybe. Deep recovery is self-help combined with help from others. So the self-help decreases the self-abandonment, and the relational work heals the parental wounding. Self-care becomes habit the more you practice it. So that is